Hi, welcome to the ComSci 137 lecture. Sunny here. For this module, we will be discussing the transport layer. Let's start. The transport layer in the TCP/IP protocol suite is located between the application layer and the network layer. It provides services to the application layer and receives the services from the network layer. The transport layer acts as a liaison between a client program and a server program, a process-to-process connection. The transport layer is the heart of the TCP/IP protocol suite. It is the end-to-end logical vehicle for transferring data from one point to another in the Internet. This embodies the client-server paradigm. An application program on the local host, called the client, needs services from an application program on the remote host, called the server. Operating systems today support both multi-user and multi-programming environments. A remote computer can run several server programs at the same time, just as several local computers can run one or more client programs at the same time. For communication, we must define the local host, local process, remote host, and remote process. The local host and the remote host are defined using IP addresses. To define the processes, we need second identifiers, called port numbers. In the TCP/IP protocol suite, the port numbers are integers between 0 and 65,535. The client program defines itself with a port number called the ephemeral port number. The word ephemeral means short-lived and is used because the life of a client is normally short. An ephemeral port number is recommended to be greater than 1023 for some client-server programs to work properly. The server process must also define itself with a port number. This port number, however, cannot be chosen randomly. If the computer at the server site runs a server process and assigns a random number as the port number, the process at the client site that wants to access the server and use its services will not know the port number. Of course, one solution would be to send a special packet and request the port number of a specific server, but this creates more overhead. TCP/IP has decided to use universal port numbers for servers. These are called well-known port numbers. There are some exceptions to this rule. For example, there are clients that are assigned well-known port numbers. Every client process knows the well-known port number of the corresponding server process. For example, while the daytime client process, a well-known client program, can use an ephemeral port of 52,000 to identify itself, the daytime server process must use the well-known port number of 13. ICANN has divided the ports into three ranges: well-known, registered, and dynamic. The ports ranging from 0 to 1023 are assigned and controlled by ICANN. These are well-known ports. The ports ranging from 1024 to 49,151 are not assigned or controlled by ICANN. They can only be registered with ICANN to prevent duplication. The ports ranging from 49,152 to 65,535 are neither controlled nor registered. They can be used as temporary or private port numbers.
In Unix, the well-known ports are stored in a file called /etc/services. Each line in this file gives the name of the server and the well-known port number. We can use the grep utility to extract the line corresponding to the desired application. A transport layer protocol in the TCP suite needs both the IP address and the port number at each end to make a connection. The combination of an IP address and a port number is called a socket address. The client socket address defines the client process uniquely, just as the server socket address defines the server process uniquely. To use the services of the transport layer in the Internet, we need a pair of socket addresses: the client socket address and the server socket address. These four pieces of information are part of the network layer packet header and the transport layer packet header. The first header contains the IP addresses. The second header contains the port numbers. Here are the positions of the three transport layer protocols in the TCP/IP protocol suite. Here are some of the well-known ports. The User Datagram Protocol, or UDP, is a connectionless, unreliable transport protocol. It does not add anything to the services of IP except for providing process-to-process communication instead of host-to-host. If UDP is so powerless, why would a process want to use it? With the disadvantages come some advantages. UDP is a very simple protocol using a minimum overhead. If a process wants to send a small message and does not care much about reliability, it can use UDP. Sending a small message using UDP takes much less interaction between the sender and receiver than using TCP. Here are some of the protocols that uses UDP with their port. UDP packets, called user datagrams, have a fixed size header of 8 bytes made up of 4 fields, each of 2 bytes or 16 bits. The first 2 fields define the source and destination port numbers. The third field defines the total length of the user datagram, header plus data. The 16 bits can define a total length of 0 to 65,535 bytes. However, the total length needs to be less because a UDP user datagram is stored in an IP datagram with a total length of 65,535 bytes. The last field can carry the optional checksum. The UDP checksum calculation includes 3 sections: a pseudo header, the UDP header, and the data coming from the application layer. The pseudo header is the part of the header of the IP packet in which the user datagram is to be encapsulated with some fields filled with zeros. If the checksum does not include the pseudo header, a user datagram may arrive safe and sound. However, if the IP header is corrupted, it may be delivered to the wrong host. The protocol field is added to ensure that the packet belongs to UDP, not to TCP. Question: given the content of a UDP header in hexadecimal format, what is the source port number? The source port number is the first 4 hexadecimal digits, which is CB84, which means the source port is 52,100. What is the destination port? The destination port is the second 4 hexadecimal digits, which is 000D, which means the destination port is 13. What is the total length of the user datagram? It is the third hexadecimal 001C. Define the length of the UDP packet as 28 bytes. What is the length of the data? The length of the whole packet minus the length of the header is 20 bytes. Is the packet directed from a client to a server or vice versa? Since the destination port is a well-known port, the packet is from the client to a server. What is the client process? The client process is the datetime. In UDP, queues are associated with ports. At the client side, when a process starts, it requests a port number from the operating system. Some implementations create both an incoming and outgoing queue associated with each process. Other implementations create only an incoming queue associated with each process. If no queue, UDP discards the user datagram and asks ICMP to send a port unreachable message to the server. The following shows some typical applications that can benefit more from the services of UDP than from those of TCP. UDP is suitable for a process that requires simple request-response communication with little concern for flow and error control. It is not usually used for a process such as TCP that needs to send bulk data. UDP is suitable for a process with internal flow and error control mechanisms. For example, the trivial file transfer protocol process includes flow and error control. It can easily use UDP. UDP is suitable transport protocol for multicasting. Multicasting capability is embedded in the UDP software but not in the TCP software. UDP is used for management processes such as SNMP. UDP is used for some routing updating protocols such as Routing Information Protocol. UDP is normally used for interactive real-time applications that cannot tolerate an even delay between sections of a received message. This ends part 1 of the module. Thank you.